All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at these tornadoes here just to start with. So this is Charlie. Yeah, it would be great if I could, I can loop this, okay, great. Oh, so that little pause right there, it's just because you rendered a bunch more frames than you intended just for the actual cycle itself.
I think
I
it needs to be
actually
up here.
I didn't. It's just the horrible school playback thing.
Okay,
Oh,
pause
okay.
this for a second before he loops back.
Okay, well, I can understand it. So let me take a look at the actual timing. Yeah, it looks okay. There's a couple of things that I would point out for you. I think that the shape of this cloud right here needs to be just a little more angular. So, you know, I'm drawing in this open space up here. And remember that we're kind of going against Mother Nature a little bit, but try to give it some more of a graphic kind of shape to it, something like that. And you can apply that to the other ribbons of smoke down here as well. Just to make it ominous and similar in regard to our example that we were playing last week. So one of the things that's kind of catching my eye here is that you do have the motion working here. This ribbon here, just be careful of the ribbon right here, or not. I think that you have this ribbon here moving just a little faster than the other ones, and that could be interesting to counteract one kind of motion with another speed. So you've got slower stuff in the top, and then another one kind of zips around the middle of it. The general theory being that the clouds, the ribbons of smoke, whatever you'd like to call them, that are closest to the core are the ones that are moving fastest, and then the further away from the core that you get, they start to move a little more slowly. All right, so yeah, and the debris is starting. I think that you want to get a lot more in there. You want to get some that go out over into here, right? You know, play with your whole field. You know, they land like this. You know, it's just to make it interesting. I think just to finish the comments on this one, I think that it's interesting that you don't have too much of a change in the line of action, which is fine. I think that tornadoes don't have to be completely wiggly kind of things. And it's true also in nature that the actual shape of the funnel clouds can be very straight up and down. They can be cones, they can be cylindrical, they can be fat, they can be wide. So it looks kind of, just from the first preview here, it looked like everyone was kind of going with my example, which is fine. But remember that you don't have to stay there. Today we're going to talk about putting a core in there, and again, just addressing the idea of nodes and stuff. Okay, so thank you, Charlie. Matt. All right, put the loop on. So this is a nice little graphic you've got over here for keeping track of whatever everything's doing. Hold on 1 second. So again, I think that the amount of the change of line of action of the core itself is working, and you're starting to track these little ribbons of smoke. I think it's time to just put in 6, 7, 8 times more. And again, we're gonna be talking just about some other ominous things for the tornado, and you got to get your debris in there. But you're off to a good start. The timing looks okay. Yeah, the timing looks okay. All right, thank you, Matt. You. Okay, the wiggle looks fine. The timing of the clouds looks good. So just like I said, yeah, you're gonna, now you want to add, now you want to go in there and add just 6, 8 times more ribbons of smoke. And I think that this is interesting too. I think that what it looks like when you take the track of the actual ribbon smoke itself and you make it at a 45-degree angle, that's the whole trick, to make it look like the smoke, the ribbons are rising. So even though they are tracking to themselves, it looks like, you will see that they look like they catch up to themselves and actually rise through the performance of the animation, the clip. So one thing that what you do to make a little variety is to draw a bunch more of these little smoke ribbons like this that are rising, and then juxtapose those with ribbons that are just moving in a horizontal fashion, that are just going around and around and around. And the idea would be is to have some of those that are just going around and around and around, and some that are really, really fast, and other ones that are just a little slower. And remember too, that the ones that are slower are generally further away from the core. Okay, thank you, you. Simran. Oh, yeah, so in this case, you did render, it looks like you did render a bit more frames. All right, so just a couple of things to think about here on this one. You've got the bottom of the tornado just kind of anchored in one place, and I think that's fine. And it looks like your ribbons are starting to roll upwards, which is good too. I kind of worry about the ice cream cone kind of look to the top here. I think that just the outline of the upper bits of smoke and clouds could use more of a horizontal spread out. So I don't know if you need to get rid of them or just add other things wider, so that you're not stuck with. Well, the other thing that's happening is that we didn't have to lock the top of the tornado into a 3D space. You have yours moving around, so that core, that top of it, is moving left and right, and I think that's fine. But I think that there's a couple of things that become a little bit relative, and the first is that in the whole visual cue of this thing, you know, I see that you've got the perspective in there. That the idea would be is that in that perspective, that we've got a tornado that's maybe 500 feet tall or something like that. And because it's moving to the left and to right so quickly, that it gives it more of a toy effect. Just because of the idea that if this tornado is going to move to the right or move to the left that quickly, it would be dragging smoke and clouds and rain and lightning behind it. But because it's moving so quickly, it kind of ends up looking kind of like a toy. So you might want to think about just slowing it down a little bit, just for first. I mean, are you on 2s maybe just right now?
Yeah, I'm on 2s.
So you could drop the whole thing to 3s and see if that helps a little bit. I don't think that it's going to help trying to extend the timeline out twice and then in between everything. But for the work that you do have, it is looking a little toy-like up there. And like I said with my lecture last week, sometimes it's easier just to start again. So, and remember too that one of the things that we're talking about in this this nature of critique is that I'm looking at it just for the first time, but you've been doing this for X number of hours. And you always want to try to take a look at something that you're doing, whatever it is that you're doing, as if you didn't do it, as if it's brand new to you. And it's one of the hardest things to do as an artist, is to critique your own stuff. But when you get to that point, you're like, that kind of looks, and you would be saying that to yourself. It's like, this thing looks like a toy. It's moving a little too fast. How do I fix that? And the answering of that in your own eye is the essence of being able to look at something objectively instead of subjectively. It's the hardest thing to do. But remember that what I do see is just kind of a little bit too much of quickness in the top part.
So it's just fixing the top part.
Just the top.
A little slower.
Yeah, I think that, and again, I think that trying to fix that by doing in-betweens would just be a little hard, because I think that, well, I mean, you could try it. You could try putting in blank frames. How many frames is this right now?
34, I believe.
34. Well, you could try it. You could try to put it on 64, but it might be easier to just readjust and try to start anew. How long have you spent on this so far?
A good amount of time. It was like 6 hours, I believe.
6.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the other thing that you can do, like I said, is to get the clouds at the top to just have a wider spread, and then to just get clouds that are moving around it slowly, and so it should be able to counteract it. And it's not like you're patching a mistake or anything like that. You're just adding to it.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Simran. All right, Devon. Sorry, I'm doing a little maintenance here in my office.
It's all good.
All right. All right. It looks like you're starting to time the ribbons up on the top, and you've got a little bit of the wiggle. You got the wiggle going. Playback is kind of funky with the zoom. Yeah, I think that you need to keep going. I was hoping to see more ribbons around the middle so I could comment on them. Keep going.
Okay.
Just keep going. It looks like you're on the right track.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Devon.
Is it okay if I use guides instead of like drawing in my guides?
I don't know exactly what you mean by that.
There's like the perspective guides that Toon Boom makes that you can select. It's fine. I mean, it's working. So
there's a field guide.
There's like, it's okay. Don't worry about it. It's working.
I would say that you would, as an artist, you would want to use any kind of tool that you would like in order to get the effect. So
Cool.
yeah, and if you do you have an example of what you're looking
I can tell you actually. Let me.
Yeah.
I think I have it open. Where is it?
Do you want to share your screen with me?
I'm trying to remember where it was at. Oh,
So in Toon Boom, they have a couple of things. They have this little tool right here shows you just kind of what your field is like, right? So you can turn off all the stuff that's on the outside, just to make sure that you're.
here. I'll screen share it.
Okay, let me stop sharing my
So
screen.
this is what I'm using. Sorry, too many monitors. Like, hold on. Screen one. Can you see it?
Yep. Okay.
The perspective guides. It's under Windows guides. Then you can put in like 1-point perspective, and it'll give you horizon.
Well, sure, absolutely. Yeah, if you want. And you can put those on their own separate layer, and then.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Just trying to make sure I wasn't doing anything like I wasn't supposed to.
No, you're good. You're good.
Awesome.
Okay, this is Gabby. Okay, so you're working on the debris, you're working on this little cloud field, that's good. A Dutch angle on this, which is good. We talked about that last week. Reminding everyone what Dutch angle was actually meant to mean, right? Remember that? Deutsches, loop. Okay, I think that you're on the right track here. I'm just studying the little ribbons of smoke. One thing that's kind of catching my eye is that the ribbons are there, but they seem to just kind of be moving around a little bit. That these blue parts don't look like you've animated them. It looks like that they're just part of you've animated the core of the tornado, which is correct, but then it looks like you maybe tried to color in the tornado with those little blue lines, and it doesn't look like you animated them. It looks like you just kind of did like a color fill on them.
Okay.
So what might work is if you just kind of used more of like a color form, just like a solid color. And because I think that once you get the idea of the smoke being pulled out, the clouds being pulled out and becoming ribbons, that you're actually almost obligated as an artist to get them to move, because the tornado is so active.
Yeah.
But I think the black ones are moving okay, and the clouds in the upper atmosphere are moving pretty good.
Okay.
And it looks like you've got some other clouds that are up in the upper atmosphere, and those are moving okay too. We will talk about the smoke more completely when we get to our volcano, but we can also introduce the idea of how to get this smoke working down here. I'll make a note so that we can cover that today. It's more like it's a dust or a cloud debris thing going on down here. It looks like you're on the right track. I'm worried just about one thing though. Yeah, so this little white dot that you've got working here, I'm not exactly sure what you were thinking. You know, I don't see like a arc that you've drawn for it.
Yeah.
I'm going backwards frame by frame here. So there's something kind of funky going on just with that little white thing. How many frames are in your cycle?
It's 31 and then I just like looped it, if that
Right.
makes sense. So I went to like 91 or something,
Right.
but it's just 31.
All right. So this circle here is intending to be a piece of debris that's coming up towards the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that because you've got it coming up in a perspective so close, you only want to do that once. And so the cycling, the loop on it is kind of catching my eye. But the other thing that's catching my eye, and I'll go forwards frame by frame here, is that I think that there's a little bit too much of a jump between those two frames right there.
Yeah.
In other words, this thing, let's just say that it's like a picket fence or a picnic table or whatever, you know, a tractor or cow, whatever you want it to be. If it's here, the approximate distance from the camera to the core of your tornado would maybe be 500 feet, a quarter of a mile or something like that. And I think that if it's near the tornado here, and I'm going to go back one more frame. So if it's near the core here, and then it's here, I think that that's too much of a jump. And so
Yeah.
we can talk about the idea of things coming up into perspective. Remember the Bugs Bunny cartoon where the bull is really mad at him and he's running, and then all of a sudden it's like 2, 3, 4, the bull just comes right up into the camera and there's a big crash. So the more time you spend in the distance, the more frames you spend in the distance, the more your audience is going to be able to read it. And then you can kind of crash it up in perspective.
Okay.
So, and it's also kind of got a funny movement to it. I'm not sure if Zoom is reading it correctly, but I'm just going to go from this position here. It goes from there to here, which means that it's like coming up into the camera to the left part of our camera really quickly. And then it appears to go backwards.
I was trying to attempt for it to loop, and when it goes around, it's getting closer, like it's going farther out, if that makes sense.
Well,
but I didn't know how to achieve that properly.
Well, I think that what you could do on your arc layer is you could actually draw a spiral.
Okay.
And that remember that when it goes back behind the tornado, that you're also going deeper into the distance.
Yeah.
That you would need more frames back there. So I think that what you're trying to do is you're not following the rules of perspective.
Okay.
So the idea would be something like this. Is that you've got, let's say that you were going to do an arc of this thing like spinning around. Let me do it the other way. So it's going to, you would have it like starting here, right? And it's going to spin around, and then it's going to come up into the camera like that. And I did that because then we can see all the positions.
Yeah.
So the idea would be is if you wanted to attempt something like this, is that you started it, and then you're going to track this thing on its own layer. So if it, and this would be near the core, it would be in the front, and then this stuff here would be behind.
Okay.
So and you this is so close to the center of the core that you probably couldn't see it anyway. So you just like do this on your arc. So you don't even see those three. And then, and this one, this would be on 2s. And then it starts to move more quickly here, right?
Yeah.
And then as soon as it goes behind again, you're going to have 3 or 4 frames that you don't see it. And then it's going to move quickly again, but now it's going to be faster than this one, something like that.
Okay, makes sense.
And then it's going to slow down again. And then you can see it here, and that's going to move a little faster. Oh, and then this one would be like here. And then this one would be going, oh, that's the wrong position. And then this one would be out, this one would be out, and then it would be getting really big here. And the only way you would know if that's working is to just try it.
Okay.
Is to see if that arc on there would actually make it look like the whatever that object is actually spinning around and then comes up into the camera.
Okay.
And you could do that just linearly like I did it, or you could have it be like this as well.
Okay.
You know, either one.
All right. Thanks.
Sure. Sharon. Yep, that looks okay. Again, I think that this is about the right amount of left and right motion that you would want in the top area. I think that any more just becomes a little hard, unwielding, hard to deal with. Now you got to do your clouds. The more you'd have shown me today, the more I could have commented, but this looks okay. All right, thank you, Sharon. Shane. All right, so this is interesting. You're trying something a little different. Yeah, I would say go for it. You know, you've got that kind of like orange peel look to the aesthetic. I think that is fine. Now you've just got to get the ribbons of smoke around there, the debris. Today we're going to talk about the little smoke down here and lightning, adding it to it. I think you're on the right track.
Okay.
Keep going.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Mark.
Yep.
Okay, so I think that this is good that we are taking 2 weeks to start plotting this thing out, because I think that you've got too much of a pronounced wiggle in here. I think that before you go any further, keeping the same kind of timing is that I think that what's going to help for you is that if you trim this down a little bit, even just leaving this one here, which is fine, but I think that this little bit out here just makes it look like a cartoon just a little too much.
I wanted it to be wiggly. Is that bad? Or
Well, let me just take another look at it.
I guess, yeah, it does look like a cartoon. Is
Well,
that?
no, I think that what's catching my eye is that this is Mother Nature. This is the forces of wind, right?
It looks too whimsical, you're saying.
Well, yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. But the thing that's kind of more precise in my observation is that the right and the left side of the curves, the arcs, are identical to each other. So the timing is like perfect. And so instead of this thing that is wind and clouds and smoke and dust and debris, ends up kind of looking like more like a character, because they're timed so identically to each other. I think that one way to attack this, approach this, would be is to have a delay in one side or the other, so that the right and the left side are not in unison with each other.
Okay.
And I think that you could do that just by varying the distance, varying the timing. There's a whole bunch of things you can do right there.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Makes
right.
sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let me make a mark in my book here. I'm going to refresh my screen. And hold on 1 second. All right, Alex. Okay, so this is interesting. So you've got a lot more energy, a lot more speed that you're going to deal with here. I'm trying to be precise with the words here. A lot more variety, a lot more change of shape quickly over time. I think it's fine. But now you've just got to put the ribbons in there. I think that you're right in assuming that the center core is going to move the fastest, and that as you move away from the center, things are going to move a little more slowly. So that frenetic energy that you've got there, it's working. I go for it. So yeah, just keep working on it. So there's a couple of things that I would like to do here, and one is that I'm going to show you a couple other things with my demo, and as we're doing that, you can and should still be working in the background. You don't have to listen to me and put your hands on your chin and just watch what I'm doing. So you can be working in the background and putting smoke in there and everything. Remember that I would like this to be due next week. All right, so did I miss anybody? All right, so remember that if you didn't have it in here today, we're taking a little bit of a chance there. This is due next week. All right, so what I would like to do right now is just kind of prep my Harmony file. So even though we're only 40 minutes into the class here, take a 5-minute break, just 5 minutes. Come back at 9:45. Just take a short break, 9:45. Okay, that was good because that stuff was a review anyway. All right, so going back here to Rough Animator. So I'm just gonna call this layer here T for tornado, and I'm gonna add another layer here by modifying layers and add just another layer. This one is going to be, I'm just gonna call this L for lightning. Oops, sometimes this thing doesn't like my keyboard. L for lightning. And so in this T layer here, I'm just gonna create a shape. I'm going to use my little pencil tool. I'm going to pick some sort of ominous gray, purple gray. And I'm just going to draw the tornado itself. And I'm going to paint it. Oops, wrong paint, sorry. All right, there we go. So, and remember, this doesn't have a lot of features in it, but what I want to do is just kind of explain the lightning here, just kind of in more simple form so that you can apply it. And you can see here too that the, I forget whether this is operating on vector or bitmap, but it doesn't fill quite as nicely as Toon Boom. Again, this is just an example. So what I'm going to do is this is not going to, the tornado in the background aren't going to be moving here. So we'll just take this out to 12 frames. I'm going to add a couple of frames to this lightning here. And then on this layer right here, I'm going to add a drawing after. Now, the way this program works is that if there are 3 frames in the first frame, and then you add a frame, it copies it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this, take that down to 1. So what we want to do is I'm going to do a flash of lightning, and then we're going to actually show lightning. Now, I kind of thought about this the other day. On Imgur, I saw this crazy lightning where it was just like growing really slowly and flashing, and it was the most intense lightning I've ever seen. And I thought that I had saved it, but I don't think I saved it. Let me just check one more time. I thought I put it in my bookmarks. Yeah, I didn't save it. I saved the Muppet movie quotes, but I didn't save the lightning. All right. So in this one here, the idea of lightning is that lightning moves very quickly. Sometimes it can move near the speed of light. Other times it can like have resistance of the particles in the air, and it actually, you can actually see it move. Lightning is crazy. But it moves quickly. Usually lightning moves quickly. In this right here, what we're going to do in this example for L1, we're just going to take a shape of the lightning, and we're gonna put this one more in white right here. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to draw this so that the shape of the lightning is just going to kind of be this. And I'm just doing this quickly, and you'll see what I'm going to do here so that I can paint this shape. All right, so that should paint. All right, so if I go in here and I say I'm going to play this thing, and I've only got that lightning frame on for 1 frame, that's as simple as you can get it, right? So if I also take this lightning layer and I move it behind the tornado, that you can see that all of a sudden it doesn't have such a prominence in your eye. The other thing that you can do is take the transparency down to half and notice that you're getting just a feeling for what that flash of lightning is like. So that's 2 ways of doing it. It's just like let it flash once and put it behind. The other thing that you can do, I'm going to turn this layer off here. So here's another thing that you can do. With this lightning layer here, I'm gonna take this out here. I'm gonna add a drawing. I'm gonna remove this one. So now in this one, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take like an area, and I'm gonna just take like it could be anything you want. This one is, I'm just going to paint this one again, and we're going to play this one. And so you can see now that looks really stupid, right? The other version that we can do here is I'm going to modify this. I'm just going to put another one in here. So the other thing that you can do is just kind of that same theory that we had. But this time, I'm just going to take an entire frame. And the idea would be is that I'm just going to replace the background. And I'm just going to paint this white. Oops, hold on, I painted the wrong thing. There. All right, so in this one, it's black and then the whole thing flashes. So the whole background flashes. And it's just one frame, right? Everyone get this idea? All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this and I'm gonna add a drawing after. And it's blank. I'm gonna add a drawing after. It has that same red before and red before and green after the frame you're working on, like Toon Boom has. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint this again with white. And now watch what happens. So as simple as it gets, there's just 2 frames. So I have a white frame, a black frame in the background, a white frame, and then back to black again. So there's 2 frames. It's white, black, white. White, nothing, white. And that's one way of eliciting lightning. So in the background, and remember, this is just flashing like crazy. There was a story 20 years ago. People were watching a Yu-Gi-Oh, or a Pokemon movie in Japan. And in Japan, animation plays at 25 FPS. And they wanted to have some flashing going on. They wanted the audience to just be like really disturbed. And so the animators had put up a whole bunch of things that were flashing. And it was to this extent that it was like as much contrast as you could get with black and white, And there was also music playing, really heavy music that was playing in the background. And for some reason, the frame rate at 25 FPS plus the amount of white and black strobing that was going on with the screen, in addition to the sound that was happening, sent a whole bunch of people into the audience into epileptic seizures. It sent them into seizures. And it was like they had to stop the movie and they had to give everyone first aid and take everyone out of there. It was crazy. I didn't hear about this until later. And later on the news in Japan, they were playing the same footage, and a whole bunch of people that were watching it on TV ended up going into seizures. And it was like, oh my God. And ever since then, the exact number of frames of contrast, black, white, and the timing of those frames and the music and the pulsing of the music has remained a secret. They didn't want to put this out there for everyone to just kind of, hey, let's send our audience into conniptions. But it is out there that remembering when you're doing something like this, it definitely has an effect on your eyes. And remember, so this is as simple as the lightning gets, is just to flash the background. And then remember that the other way is to just flash. And remember that shape doesn't have to be like that. So let's modify this shape here. So I'm just going to modify that. And in this one, I'm just going to pick like a more of an amorphous shape. Like this. And I'm going to paint it as well. Now we're just going to play it. You know, so that's just, and this is supposed to be like the glow of the lightning, right? And I turned the opacity down. So, and it doesn't work quite as well like that. So just keep in mind that the lightning can do all kinds of things. In this one right here, it can, you can flash the background 2 or 3 times. All right, so now let's talk about lightning itself. The tornado is like spinning around up there. It's going crazy. We're gonna add a layer here. I'm gonna put this on top. And now let's talk about actually doing lightning. All right, so when I'm going to add a drawing after, add a drawing after, add a drawing after. So we got a bunch of blank frames here. Right about here, the Mother Nature does a couple of things. The first is that there's static electricity up in the clouds, and that there's a discharge somewhere. Let's just pick a point right here. Because lightning doesn't always have to hit the ground. Lightning can just hit the actual cloud tornado itself. But it's going to start up here. So we have an initial point and then a contact point. And what happens is that the discharge actually starts from the ground and then goes to the top, and then the lightning reacts backwards. Well, we only see the lightning that is going towards the ground. You can do it backwards if you want. You can have the lightning go upwards and then backwards. It happens really quickly. But what you want to do is you want to pick a good shape. And so just like we do, we're going to do our research here. We're going to, well, I'm not going to play these. They're on the board, but you can see that they're in this example right here, that there's a variety of thickness. In this one, it starts out thin and then gets really tenderly thin towards the outside. In this example, it looks like someone has just put a whole bunch of lightning together. And it's just crazy. And I'm refreshing here. Let's find another one. Remember, what we're doing is we're like doing visual reference here. There was a couple that I had put down here further in the board that work out pretty good. This one's good. So in this one, it starts out center core and then it kind of spreads out a little bit. And so let's just kind of work with that one in our rough animator. So here what we're going to do is we're going to take that point that is going to just start. And lightning can move on a straight line. It can be jagged. It's going to go towards the general place that it's going to hit. And the air resistance is very slight. And so you want a little bit back and forth there because the lightning does tend to want to do its own little thing. All right, so this is just my first frame. And remember too that just if I played this, you know, it would end up looking like lightning, just with that one frame. And here on this one particular frame, we could go back in here and we can jazz this up a little bit. We can add a little bit of volume in the upper part, just like we saw in our example. You know, you don't have to fatten up all of it. And then on the next frame, we can take this and we can grow it just a little bit. So I'm going to change this direction. I'm going to keep this static, and this is going to come out a little bit to the right, and this is going to come out a little bit to the left, kind of maintaining the same basic kind of shapes. This is going to go to the right. This is going to go to the left. And then the hit point is just going to kind of be the same, just right there. Remember that even though I'm drawing scrappy lines right here, I'm still trying to think about lighting. Add one more drawing here, and then we're going to continue that motion out just a little bit, just a little bit more. All right, now I haven't spent a lot of time on that, and I would want to make it look like really great shapes, right? But the idea is just timing here. So let's take a look at this. All right, so you know that starts to work. Let's just take this one and increase this one by a frame. and see if that changes our look on it. So another thing that is happening in the example is that there's a little dissipation. And so let's work on that. And so right here, we're just going to have this little piece trail away, and we're going to have this little piece trail away. Same thing with all the little parts. All right, so you can see that there's a number of different ways to get this to work. And again, I think that the lightning can start anywhere in the clouds up here and hit in the middle. If you're going to have one piece of lightning on the left, it might make sense to have another on the right. It might make sense to have one that is a little bit smaller. And it's really easy. It's just not that hard at all. And remember that the other thing that you can do is put them both together so that you've got a, let me think about the best way to do this. Oh yeah, so like right when this lightning is flashing right there on this frame, we're just gonna paint the background white. So on this frame right here, when this is here, well, the obliteration could be kind of a funky thing. Let's just try it. So we're not gonna be able to see it, but let's take the opacity down. And so what I've done is I've just painted the background for that goes on the first flash. So you can see the effect. It's just really that easy. Everyone okay with this idea? So and what I would do is just more than anything right now, we're just paying attention to timing. You know, we're talking about one frame, 24 FPS, just 2 or 3 drawings, a flash of black and a flash of white. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a new project. And again, I'm just doing this because it's just a little faster, a little easier. So let's just talk about the idea of a bomb exploding. So we're gonna take our layer 1 here. We're gonna give ourselves a horizon. I'm just going to call this B for bomb. And on my cinematic third here, I'm just going to draw a shape for a bomb. The other people that have PCs can actually use the, there's a graphic tool in here where you can actually make geometric shapes. But us Mac people are stuck with just having to draw. There's no constraint right there. All right, so in this example here, one thing that I've done with the bomb and explosions is kind of work on that, the idea that this particular pirate bomb here has a fuse on it. And so one of the things that we can do today is just talk about how to do this fuse. And so all right, so let's take the horizon out. All right, so this is an added thing here. You can do this bomb separately if you want. I believe in the class, there's a place for explosions, and I don't think it's this week. I think that there's explosions are happening next week. So if you wanted to do this separately, one thing that you can do is do an explosion right here. And this is just a simple explosion of a bomb. All right, so What I've done right there is I've just added a bunch of frames where we're not going to be able to see anything happening. So it's just nothing and nothing is happening. And I erased it. I changed my mind. So on this layer right here, I'm going to add the actual fuse. And here's the simplest way to do this. I'm just going to call this F for fuse. And I'm just going to give myself a short fuse. I'm just going to give myself like one of those pirate chords. And then on another layer on top of it, what I'm going to do is we're going to draw like technically the spark. This is just the spark. And the best way to do this is we're going to pick another color here, is to get on 1s or 2s, is to just get the idea of sparking happening. So I'm just going to put like 5 or 6 little explosion parts. And I'm going to put some pixie dust out here. Look, everyone, pixie dust. I could paint my background maybe a gray or something. Just so that we can see it. I painted it red. I don't know why I painted it red. All right, but we can see it now. So that on this spark layer, oh, I'm sorry. So I want this fuse to be, it's going to decrease in size over the course of a few frames. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually animate the fuse going down. So the fuse is going to animate on, I want it to be on 4s. So now what I'm going to do with this fuse color is I'm just going to animate I'm going to copy this just as it is, but it's gonna actually, the easiest way to do this is to copy and paste and just erase. So I'm going to just do this really quickly. So just this little piece right here, I'm going to copy that, and on the fuse layer I'm going to paste it, and then I'm going to erase it just a little bit, add a frame. Hold on, I want this to be on 2s. Paste it, erase it a little bit, paste it, you only need a couple of these. And it doesn't have to be the most astonishing thing you've ever drawn. And you can make it even a little bit more elaborate than what I'm doing. And one more. All right, so now we've got like a template here. Let's take a look at what this plays like. All right, so that's fine. I think that I might even want to take these out to 4s. And let's play it again. Okay, so Now on my fuse layer, my spark layer, I'm going to just on twos is now we're gonna add a little bit of the pixie dust happening. And these spark things here are moving outwards. So you just animate them outwards and a little bit of magic pixie dust out there. The more spontaneous, the better. You can see that it's moving down, so move these things with it. Again, the same rule applies, just get these little sparkle things so that they're not in the same place as the other ones. It's actually pretty simple. They can actually explode just like we saw in our pixie dust. There can be a lot more of them. Remember, this thing is hissing, right? Now, I don't recommend adding this bomb like this to the tornado. It would be weird. And I'm just doing this as quickly as I can just to have the demo. All right, so that should give us enough of an approximation of what this fuse should look like. All right, so you get that idea, right? You see it? Take a look. So that's the idea of getting the fuse to work. In the narrative, I think that what happens then is that we have got a bomb that's going to explode here, and the fuse is out. The fuse is, it's turned itself off. And now what we can do is we can add a little bit of smoke. And I think that what we're going to end up doing is working on the smoke to a greater degree in our volcano. But this one is a chance to do kind of a wispy smoke. And so on this layer 5 right here, which I'm just going to call smoke, this gives us a chance to play with the idea of a thin, like cigarette smoke. And we're just going to do this one on 4s, and we might end up having to do in-betweens on it. That's fine. All right, so right here, what happens, and you just kind of have to think about what is going on here. Maybe in like an arc layer, you can draw what you want for a layout. For how you want the smoke to work. All right, so this, I'm just going to call this LO for layout. And so then in this layer here, I want the smoke to just kind of look like this. You know, I just kind of want it to do something like that. So I'm going to turn this down a little bit on the smoke layer right here. We're just going to start this coming out. So I'm just going to kind of copy this and grow it. I want my bomb to be with us just for a little while longer. All right, and the other thing what I'm doing here right now is I'm also kind of letting it move. So the smoke, it started out just from my layout, but I'm also pushing it to the right and pushing it to the left. It's just a little wisp. The fuse has burned out. And so it's just kind of lingering in there. And again, this is just a really quick little bit here. And then this part's gonna dissipate, it's gonna disappear, so that once it gets up to about here and starts curling on itself, the bottom part, we don't see it as much. And in fact, you could probably make some sort of adjustment to say, you know, I don't think that I need it to go any further than, oops, hold on, than just a few frames. Let's just do a couple more. All right, so this should give you the idea of what this little wispy smoke is going to look like. I'm kind of copying the overall shape, and I'm just kind of getting it to move up, and I'm getting it to disappear. And I'm just doing this rough. I'm going to maybe go back and touch it up a little bit. And this little ribbon of cigarette smoke, this little fuse smoke, is going to go away. And remember, I'm on 4, so that it's actually moving slower than what I'm drawing. So let's take our bomb. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've got. I'm going to save this. This is just going to be B for bomb. Play it. All right, so you see how it's working there. The fuse is working. You got the little sparks. You got the little smoke coming out there on 4s. It could even be slower. So let's take another adjustment on this. All right, and so remember that the bomb is going to explode here in just a little bit. All right, so let's just take one more look at it. What's this? It could be slower. Remember that what you have is that the smoke right now is on 4s, and if you take it higher than 4s, if you take the timing up more like in 6s or 8s, you would technically need to do an in between, because it's going to just jump around just a little too much. All right, so what we want is in the narrative, you want this bomb to be sitting there for just a moment before it actually explodes. So what we've got is that the spark, the fuse is playing. Let me take it back. It's and there's a little whistle of smoke, and there's a pause, and then the explosion will happen. So it's going to take our layout down, and now we're going to do an explosion layer, and we're going to put this on top. And so the bomb is right here, and on the explosion layer, we want that to start right about there. So I'm going to take this first drawing here and just take it all the way out. And then bombs are actually really easy. There's the explosions happen very, 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 very quickly. But follow these general rules. We've already done this once today. Let's do it again. And remember that the idea of this flash is to give you an idea of how to handle the lightning in your tornado. And remember that if you can do this bomb project separately if you would like. All right, so what I've gotten the layout here now is the bomb disappears right here. On this frame, let's do one more frame. On this frame here, the bomb goes away. It just goes away. And so what this flash right here is going to be is just an empty frame. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a drawing after, and I'm going to take this back down. I wish there was a faster way to do this in this application, but that's okay. All right, so just like we did in our lightning, we're going to do with the bomb here. So what we got in this frame here is whatever our horizon, our background, our bomb, we're just going to take this and we're going to paint it black. And then we're going to go a next frame out and we're going to paint it white. Just on ones. One more frame. Paint it black. And then let it go. So then what you're going to have is this layer 7 here is going to be the actual explosion. And this happens on ones. Lots of clicking, sorry about this. All right, and now the general rule for explosions is that there are probably only about 8 frames that you need. Let's just take a look at the way that flash looks right now. Hold on, yeah, here we go. All right, so there's the flash. And now the way the explosion actually works here, remember that we were just here, black, white, black. And if what we would like to do is we would like to see where that bomb was. And so on this layout layer, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick a color. I'm going to stay with black. On the layout layer, I'm just going to kind of copy the center point and the place where it touches the ground plane, so that when I get here, I don't know why I can't see it. Oh, here we go. Center and the place where it touches the ground. All right, so now that I'm here, something funky is happening. Where did I draw that? I drew it on the wrong layer. Hold on a second, everybody. I think I might have drawn it on the background. Oh yeah, I did, okay. That's what I get for drawing things on the background. We'll just use that little bit right there as a shadow. All right, so on the layout, bomb layout, I want a center point. I just need to know where the bomb explodes from. There we go, okay. So there's a couple of things that you want to do. One is that remember that you've just had black, white, black, and now you're going to just draw a big flash. Just use 6 or 7 points. You can hold your shift key down if you want. Remember that the ground is right here, And so you can interrupt the ground a little bit. Because it's just flashing. You don't have to paint this black just quite yet. You can just leave it sit there for a second. And now the next one, explosions happen really fast. So let this be 500% of what it was. And we're going to paint that black here in just a moment. And again, I could hold my shift key down so that those were straight. All right, so now this is going to go off the screen. It just happens that fast. And at the same time it's going off the screen, it starts to open up. There's a hole that's going to happen in the middle of it. So in the middle here, we're just going to start a new inner space that's different than the other lines that we've just drawn. And so this is going to be an open space right there. And then we're going to go one more frame. So now now we're going to draw white. So this black, this is black right here. So this black triangle goes off the screen. This black triangle goes off the screen. This one goes off the screen. And then you could start with this one. This is just the open space. And that everything else is going to be black. Like that. All right, and then let's just play this, take a look at it. Fuse, 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 smoke, pause, flash, and so the explosion. All right, so let's paint this just so that we can get a feeling for what the actual, oops, painted the wrong thing, hold on. I think it doesn't like the fact that the shapes aren't closed. So let me make sure that the shapes are closed. All right, let's go back, paint this. There we go. See that's not, this shape is open here. All right, there we go. All right, so that gives you the idea of how the explosion itself works. So this is a very cartoon version, smoke, pause, explode. All right, so now what I'd like to do is take a 15-minute break. When we come back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you actually how to get the shards coming out, and then you can put smoke on top of this and be done with it. Remember that we're just covering this as a bomb, and that the best way to approach the flashing of lightning and this flash of black white in your tornado is the best way to make that ominous effect. So take a break. I will see you all just a little bit after 11. Okie dokie, I'm back. So the thing that I would like to do now is I would like to just talk about finish up the idea of this explosion itself. You know, right now we've got it working. There's a little narrative here. But just walking through this again, we've got the fuse burning down. We've got the sparks working. I think that we can jazz this up and add twice as much or 3 times as much of this fuse burning. I think that it's a good thing just to know how to get things moving and how to get things exploding, copying and pasting, erasing. It's a good thing to know how to get this kind of wispy smoke. I think just the idea of getting the S shape to push out to the left and to the right and to just go up and to dissipate. It's a good thing to know. It's a good thing to try just with 12, 14 drawings right there. It's just, it's a good thing to just have in your toolkit. I think that just with this one, that I could have even expanded the smoke bit to the right here just a little bit. Let me just add that in there. So what I mean by that is that on this particular frame right here, I think that this is like where the thing that's burning is the most closest to the source, so that when we get here, it might have made sense to keep this little wispy thing out here just a little bit more. So I'm going to borrow those frames that we've got and just kind of add that, just that little bit right there. Just to give our eye just some visual interest. All right, and we'll see that here in just a moment. So after we've got this main flash, this main bit right here, what we're going to do is now we're going to go back to the cartoon version of what the actual timing and spacing of shapes looks like in the explosion. Let me take the onion skin down just a little bit. This is just a little much right there. All right, good. So remember, this is where our bomb was. It was in the shape of a circle. And right at this frame right here, what we're going to be doing is copying. I don't like that. We're going to be borrowing the shape of the metal itself, and we're going to just destroy it. It's coming out from the center. It can have a 3-dimensional quality to it, so you can add that in there. Just a variety of shapes, and you can paint them if you want. All right, so then the timing is actually pretty simple. These things move really fast. It can also break apart. So even though this thing was already broken, it can break apart as well. And you can see that the timing is moving pretty fast. You can see that I'm moving at a good 1.5 inches from the source. That. And there's something interesting that'll happen here in just a moment, and that is that we'll be able to see this. Even though in animation, one of the things that you learn right away is that if the thing that you're animating isn't overlapping, if the parts, the end, the hands, the arms, whatever it is that you're animating doesn't overlap, they'll do what's called strobing. And sometimes you don't want strobing. Sometimes that effect is just unwanted. But here in an explosion, I think the strobing is actually pretty good. We're going to play with this idea of things disappearing and speeding up here in just a moment. So let's take a look at this. So what I'm looking at is this, the metal part of the bomb is the part that is just flashed out of the center. We can see it. So let's go back and let's paint them and see the difference that painting them causes the strobing to actually be quite a bit more pronounced. You'll be able to see the color. There was a really great story of a director at Wild Brain. We were working on a Willy Wonka commercial for Shock Tarts or something. And the Oompa Loompas were jumping up and down on a trampoline, and they were pencil drawings on top of the background. And the background got painted black, and the Oompa Loompas dungarees were white. And as soon as they were painted white, they strobed like mad. And Phil was like really concerned that it was too much strobing, that the Oompa Loompas looked like they were actually exploding. And the only thing we could do is put motion blur in there to get rid of that. So let's take a look at just that little paint job we just did right there. And you can see that that works fine. I think that the more of them, the better. The more little shapes, the better. It's on ones. And so what we're going to do right now is we're going to talk about the smoke. So on this flash layer, remember we did black, white, black. So we're going to borrow that layer now, and we're going to add the smoke. So right here, we're just going to talk about the smoke. And remember that I'm just doing this in this rough animator application just because it's really simple. I'm going to take the layout just a couple of more frames so we can see it. So what I want to do is I want to just add some smoke here. And so this is the first bit of instruction that you all had, that you will have about smoke. And so there's a couple of things that we're going to borrow from the art world of aesthetics, and that is that you want the smoke to have a variety of shapes. You can make it look cartoony, you can make it look realistic, you can add a little style to it. It can be, you can use straight lines if you want, you can use weird and odd colors if you want, but let's just stick with the standard textbook smoke. So what we've got, remember what we've got? We've got the fuse, we've got the pause, we've got the explosion itself, the flash, and now the smoke starts. And so I'm just going to draw some simple little shapes here. I'm going to draw big, medium, and little shapes. And I'm doing it this way with popcorn-like arcs, just so that we can see it. I can put in some interior shapes here if I wanted. That's fine, but this does start to look like smoke. All right, smoke moves at a pretty quick clip, especially with the violent explosion that we've just had from the center point. So I'm going to take this arc right here and move it out. I'm going to add in a smaller shape between these two shapes. I'm going to add in another bigger part there. This is going to become a medium shape. This is going to become really big. I'm going to add in another smaller part between those two arcs. And something like this. Now that interior shape that we just drew here is like a little moon. I'm just going to make that bigger. And I'm going to give it its a little shape like that. I'd probably end up making it like a shadow. All right, I'm having it at ones right now, but this could actually be on twos. So we're gonna set this on ones, and then we'll see that it's moving way too fast, and we're gonna put it on twos. All right, so while the smoke gets out about this far, it's going to start having a hole in the middle of it. So in fact, if I start to bring this shape really big right here, I'm going to get into trouble just immediately. So what I'm going to do now is introduce a hole. And I'm just going to make my arcs go backwards. Again, I'm just being cartoony because it's easier to see it, but you can be more artistic with this if you want. So that's the interior hole of the smoke. And you can kind of see that I pointed this arc so that this became a round shape and that this becomes a round shape. This is going to continue outwards, right? And it's pluming. It's got like this circular, spherical kind of shape to it. And so even though I just disagreed with myself about bringing this one out here and having it connected, let's think about this for, yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up just a little bit. I'm going to create a negative space here like this. Now the danger, I'm going to change my mind because this line that I just drew is on top of this line on the frame right before it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change both of those because I want the progression. I want this thing to move outwards. So if I wanted to do anything, I'd have to get this shape out here to be like its own little nub of smoke so that this progresses outwards. And then this is going to have to do its own thing and connect back into here at some point. So let's try something like that and like this. And so that'll work. I might even want to put like a little one right there. This shape, right? So this line I drew right there is on top of the other line. Let's see if it's just completely disagreeable. This shape right here is going to come out really big and create a negative space like this. And the reason that I'm doing it like this is because now in the next frame, I will have a whole bunch of things that I can break apart. So this whole circular spherical shape now is going to become something like this. That negative space that we just drew is all gone. It's even in just one frame that it is just gone. All right, so then this kind of breaks out over here, moves to the left. And remember that the shapes I'm drawing are just simple. I'm trying to think of large, medium, and small shapes. I'm trying to get this thing to move pretty quickly. I'm looking for a variety of shapes. Through the rest of the semester, you will hear me say the word variety of shapes a whole bunch of times. You don't want to do any kind of repeated pattern whatsoever. This is an explosion. Mother Nature is just doing her worst right here. Now, what I skipped was the step of going and looking at reference, but you should know that by now. It says if you don't know how to get these shapes in your hand, go do your visual reference. Okay, so now the smoke can start to disintegrate. It can start to break apart. And remember that I'm planning this just so that we can see what the actual shapes look like and the progression of their movement. But I am definitely going to put this on 2s. And it is black lines against our background. I'm also thinking about kind of air pressure, that the explosion has caused this smoke to push outwards. And a couple more drawings here. So this is just gonna disintegrate over here, 2 or 3 little parts. One of the rules in animation is that you don't want, when you're doing something like this, you don't want everything to disappear on the exact same frame, because then it'll just look a little too mechanical. So right about now, I'm thinking about what parts I'm going to let linger, let them be on the screen for a little longer than the other parts. All right, so this is pretty good for our demo right here. And the next little bits are easy because everything is kind of disappearing. So this is just going to have a couple over here, a couple over here. Shapes become just a little bit more puffy smoke kind of deal. And let a couple of them last for a whole bunch of frames longer. I don't think that you would want to pop these like we do in our special effects, our pixie dust. All right, so let's see what that looks like. Oops, I don't want to do that. Spews, smoke, explosion, and now this is way too fast, right? All right, so let's take a look at our timeline here. Right now we got a whole bunch of frames to work with. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to add, let's just put the whole thing on 2s. And I'm imagining that 4s is going to work better. All right, so let's take a look at that. So we just took the smoke and put it on 2s. Fuse, wisp, pause, explosion, smoke. Let's put it on 4s. Let's make sure we have enough time down here. So in the timeline, I'm going to add a bunch of frames down here. And I'm going to say a couple of things for our animators here. So what I'm going to do is, instead of putting this on 3s, I'm going to put this on 4s because it would be easier to in between. And I have just a sneaking suspicion that it's going to look better on 4s. If it's on 4s, it's much easier to in between. So I'm going to take the smoke and put it on 4s. What is going on here? Oh. Huh. Save it. Let's take a look at what we've got. Okay, so that's good. And I think that it's good on 4s. So the thing that I was going to say for our animators is that this is not cycling. So if you wanted to produce a little bit more of a narrative here, one thing that you could consider is how long this thing is right now. We've got 140 frames. So this is well over 5 seconds. It's pushing 6 seconds. If you really wanted to, you could have those little shards, these little shards that were right here, have the ones that go all the way up fall back down. And that would be a few seconds out in the timeline. It's something to consider, something to think about. In past classes here, when I've done examples like this, I've made stylistic points of reference to saying, hey, you know, what if this bomb thing here wasn't really a bomb? What if it was a duck? And the duck had a fuse stuck in its head, and then the duck explodes. And then instead of these things looking like shards, you know, they're just small ducks. The duck explodes and he becomes just smaller versions of small ducks. And then out here in the timeline, when those little debris ducks fall back in, they're little mini ducks. It's just something to think about as an animator if you wanted to play around with it, if you wanted to goof around with it just a little bit. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to anyone have any questions about this explosion? Okay, so let's go back to Harmony. And what I want to do is I want to talk about a couple of things, just a couple of things to jazz this up a little bit. And I'm trying to think of the best way. And I think that what I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate this example that we were using last week. And I think that what we had done is I was explaining to you, and it looked like I did a pretty good job of getting everyone on board with animating the twisting of the tornado itself. You know, and right now, if I play this, it's going to flash like mad because there's no in-betweens, right? It's just going to flash, flash, flash. So it's not exactly the in presentation form, if you will. But what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to add a layer. Oh, you know what? I had that turned off. Or I'm not clicking on the right layer. Oh yeah, let me. That wasn't it. Let me see which one it was. All right, so there's a couple of things that I want you all to consider. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a new layer here. And this is just going to be, I'm going to call this core. You can all see my screen, right? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so on this core layer, I have to figure out where it went on the bottom. Let me put it back up here towards the top. All right, so I'm just going to give you some hints to make this project a lot more show worthy, if you will. Okay. Oops, hold on. All right, so I think I'm gonna do it over here on the left. You know, I really like this idea of being able to draw off the stage in Harmony. I think it's really great. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just draw my tornado. And I'm going to explain a couple of things while I'm doing this. Remember that it's an interesting thing to mimic the arcs. It's good, but there are a bunch of other varieties of approach that you can do with this. This is fine. All right, so on this particular drawing here, remember that what this is, it's just a cloud. It's dust, it's debris. So what I would do is remember that we were working on a 32 frame cycle. And so you've only really got 16 of these to contend with. My recommendation would be a couple of different things. One is if you you go in and you hit paint unpainted, and you just hit paint, you know, sometimes it's going to be funky. It's not going to paint. Why is it not going to paint? You know, you have to kind of think about it here. Paint, repaint. Sometimes Toon Boom just becomes a beast. Looks like the shapes are
We
pretty
need
close.
to go to the other layer because you are in the line layer. For paint.
Oh yeah, you can paint on the line layer. And I always like do the wrong thing, you know, because I'm always trying to go too fast. It's that you don't always have to paint on the color layer. A lot of times I've found that sometimes Toon Boom won't paint unless you're really far away. In the paint bucket tool, there's a thing here where it says close large gaps. And so there's a danger here that if you're closing large gaps, you're going to get like so I don't know why it's not painting. It's really strange. Everything looks fairly closed. You know, I got to get this to paint. It's, you know, I was just going to say sometimes it likes to paint better if you drag your paint bucket tool. But now Toon Boom is being a beast on me. Huh, strange. All right, let me go to the next frame and try it again. Oh, hold on. Strange. There we go. I don't know why it was misbehaving. All right, so, and this is not the best shape either. I had the K key turned on, which shows me my strokes. And I thought that might have been why. I don't know why. Toon Boom is just being a bad animal right now. So remember that one of the things that you want to do is make sure that you add some sort of transparency to this. So let's go to our node view. We're clicking on this guy here. We called it core. And so this wound up in a really strange place here, this core. And that might have been why it's not painting properly. Also, I think I might have had another layer called core, and I think it's just turned off right now. So let me select this one so that I can see it in the node view. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy. I'm going to select everything, hit this button, keep everything at 25 and say, okay, so I'm going to spread them out. And so I believe this is the core we're working on right now. Nope, it's not. All right, that one is, and it's not, this one is not into the composite mode, so I'm going to bring it back into the composite mode. If it wasn't there, it wouldn't play, it wouldn't render, it wouldn't become part of your QuickTime movie. All right, so this is just a reminder. What we're going to do is we're going to add in a transparency node to that. And you can also add a glow or a blur node. So let's add glow. And this is the core that we were just working with. So let's drag the transparency and the glow node all the way over here. And we'll zoom in on them just so we can see them. And remember that thing that we did with this spread out tool in ordering them is so that you grab the right thing. So I'm going to grab the core and I'm going to put it into the transparency into the glow, and the glow into the composite. And I'm going to move it one over so I can see it. All right, so I think that should be fine right there. And then we're going to go back to the timeline view, and you'll see that in the timeline view, I don't know why it moved down here, but that's okay. So under the transparency, remember that it starts out as 50% transparent. It disappeared on me. Wonder if I used the right one. Huh. Okay, so all right, so then I'm going to take the glow, and the glow is set so that you can have an RGB. You can play with all of that within the glow itself. The intensity is 1. And so, like I said in the other one, take it up to about 2.5 or something like that. Change it to the render mode so you can actually see what it looks like. Oh, and remember, you can't because it's off the stage. But what I wanted to say, that one of the more important things that I wanted to say here was that in a tornado, if we just jump over to like a regular, just an image of a tornado itself. So let's just switch it to images. You're going to see a couple of things. One is that you're going to see that there's a shadow and a highlight. And so it's not technically completely transparent, but some of them are. Some of them have this like this edge where it's transparent. So my recommendation would be is to use a couple of different levels. And so if this one is the core right here, I'm going to add maybe 2 more on top of this. Let's just do 1 more right now. And we're just going to call this C2 for core 2 and say add and close. Now we have to go find it and put it on top of the core that we were just looking at. And for some reason, Toon Boom is just moving things around randomly right now. And I have too many layers here in my demo. I got to find out where that core 2, I'm going to Z that out. All right, so let's just leave it. Let me see if I can get it back down here. So my recommendation would be is that if you've got just 16 drawings of the core moving from left to right, that I would recommend a couple of things. And again, I think there's something wrong with this file. And what I think is wrong with this is that one of these layers is broken. And as a caution to all of you, that I would like be very careful with this in continuing to work with this. Just because it's not letting me move this C2 layer here, it's like, uh-oh, my experience is that there's a gnome. I always call them gnome, a little gremlin that's living in one of these layers, and this whole Toon Boom file is in danger of going away. It's in danger of like breaking and not working at all, not working at all, like ever again. So let me see if I can just get through this. Yeah, something is not right. This should be showing up still. So let me just explain that I would think that in order to emulate a highlight or a shadow is to go in on, and I'm just going to draw on top of this one layer here, so because I know it's working, and then create yourself, and again, this should be on a separate layer on top of the original tornado, is to create, oh, I don't want to do that. It's to create maybe the shadow layer and make it paintable. So keep those shapes closed. And so what you can do then is, and then keep it on its own layer so that you can, so, and this is kind of strange that it's giving me the stroke as well, but if it's on its own layer, then you can give it its own transparency, its own glow, its own blur. And if it moves just a little differently from the core, that would be fine because it's nature. There's a lot of organic things happening there. And then even on top of that is to put like a darker core. So even smaller. And I don't think this is quite working the way I wanted it to. Nope, it's not. Hold on a
Yo,
second.
Billy, I think you're on your color layer, not your line layer.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so again, these things would just, as soon as you get that little core working and you're happy with it, is to go in and add, and again, I'm sorry that my Toon Boom isn't working here correctly, is that you would add a couple of layers on top of it just to emulate this idea of a highlight and a shadow. And if they're on their own separate layers, you can control each one of those things independently. You can control the transparency, the blur, whatever it is, whatever node you want to work on that. It gives it more of a 3D quality. All right, so let me go back to my stage here and just reiterate just a couple of things for you all. I think that as long as you are working with 32 frames, now I want everyone to just like pay attention to this part here. If you are working with only 32 frames, that I think that stylistically and aesthetically is that really the only thing that you want to do is get the tornado working, that it's so that it's spinning, all the things are working properly in 16 drawings. If you start adding in a crazy amount of lightning, it's going to be really distracting. It might be that even one flash of lightning is distracting. If over these 32 frames, you employ the idea that we were just working with this bomb about flashing the background black, white, black, or it would just be black, white, black. Over 32 frames is only a second and a half. That too can be distracting. So you don't have to do it. Put it in there and take a look at it, think about it artistically, and maybe save it for our volcano. There's a whole different approach we're going to use for the volcano, but at least I showed you how to do it. Take a look at it, do it, put it in there, and then make that decision about whether you actually want it in there or not. Again, I think that once you get the 32 frames working and you've got 8, 10, 16 ribbons of clouds moving around, and you're happy with it, and you've got a lot of debris working, and you've got the core moving correctly, and you've got the highlight shadow core moving, you've dressed up the background just a little bit, this is due next week, then you may find it easier to copy and paste everything out into the timeline 4 times and then do a lightning just so it flashes once. And you could do the whole thing. You could do the black, white, black for the background, And then you could do that on top of the lightning. There's just a bunch of different approaches here, and you can be artistic with it as much as you want.